Brahmarṣi Viśvāmitra. As we enter Sarga 18 of the Bāla Kāṇḍa, I want to pause upon that name, because it would be very easy for us to hurry ahead. After all, this is the Sarga in which Śrī Rāma will be born. But everyone knows that Śrī Rāma will be born. What I do not want is for us to miss something that is far more subtle. When in the Sargas ahead, we behold Śrī Rāma as Ramo Vigravahan Dharmaha, Dharma itself embodied in human form, we will naturally behold the splendor of the finished structure. We will admire its beauty, its majesty, its perfection. But beneath every lofty structure lies a foundation, unseen perhaps, yet bearing its weight. And behind the Śrī Rāma, whom the Bharata Samskriti has loved and worshipped across countless generations, stands an extraordinary Guru Parampara. Vasishtha Maharshi in his childhood, Brahmarṣi Viśvāmitra as Rama steps beyond the protected walls of Ayodhyā, and much later Agastya Maharshi. Luminous Gurus, each meeting Rama at a different stage of his journey, each instructing him, guiding him, placing something in his hands and taking him one step further. And there is something here that deserves our contemplation. Because this is Śrī Rāma. This is no ordinary prince whom these Maharshis are guiding. This is Bhagavan Vishnu himself, manifest in human form. And yet, he does not transcend the Guru. He does not place himself beyond the Guru Parampara. He receives, he listens, he learns, and he obeys. He walks behind his Guru. Perhaps there is a lesson there which requires very few words. For if Śrī Rāma himself demonstrates such reverence before the Guru, what then of you and me? And among those towering figures who helped sculpt the life of Śrī Rāma stands none other than Vishwamitra. Words cannot truly capture his greatness. Know him to be the Dṛṣṭā of the Gayatri Mahāmantra, the one who perceived that which was not composed, but rather revealed to him. In the later Sargas, we will witness the extraordinary journey of Vishwamitra himself. He had been a king, and not merely a king, a conqueror who had marched across the earth, subduing kingdom after kingdom beneath his sovereignty. He had known power, such power that when the Devatas refused Trishanku entry into the Sarga, Vishwamitra, through the force of his own tapasya, began creating another Sarga for him. Stars, constellations, another celestial order, almost as though this one man stood in defiance of the very arrangement of the cosmos. And he had known ambition, an ambition so fierce that when Vasishtha Maharshi's spiritual power humbled all the might of his Kshatriya throne, Vishwamitra did not simply accept defeat. He resolved to become what Vasishtha was. Not another kingdom, not another throne, a Brahmarṣi. And for that, he would subject himself to a tapasya so formidable that even the Devatas would take notice. And upon that long road towards Brahmarshitvam, he would know Kama. When Menaka appeared before him, Vishwamitra succumbed to desire, and years passed away before he awakened again to the pursuit from which he had strayed. He would know Krodha. When the sons of Vasishtha opposed him, his fury erupted, and precious taposhakti accumulated through immense tapasya was expended in a curse. And he would know Ahamkara, for this was once a sovereign who had commanded armies, conquered kingdoms, and believed there was little upon this earth beyond the reach of a king, until he encountered Vasishtha Maharshi and discovered that all his armies, all his weapons, all his Kshatriya Bala could be rendered powerless before the Brahma Tejas. Kama, Krodha, Ahamkara. Not once would Vishwamitra stumble upon this road, but rather again and again and again. There were extraordinary attainments. There were also extraordinary setbacks. And then more tapasya. The journey continued. The pursuit continued. Until the king who had once wielded Kshatriya Bala came to possess something infinitely more luminous, Brahma Tejas. And perhaps that is why, when Valmiki Maharshi brings Vishwamitra before us, he does not give us the image of an ordinary man. He invokes the image of an Agnishika, a blazing crest of fire. What a description! And what must the tapasya of a man have been for Valmiki Maharshi to ask us to behold him as an Agnishika? We will hear the extraordinary story of Vishwamitra's own journey in the later Sargas of the Bāla Kāṇḍa. For now, I simply want us to recognize who is approaching our story, because from here something changes. Śrī Rāma is about to be born, and soon Vishwamitra will arrive. And consider the stature of the Maharshi we have just encountered. Śrī Rāma, the Parabrahman himself, will accept Vishwamitra as his guru. The child will walk behind the Maharshi. He will listen. He will learn. He will receive from him. And perhaps that alone tells us something about the extraordinary stature of Vishwamitra Maharshi. From here, the Ramayana begins to acquire another depth, almost another dimension, because the words that will now be spoken, particularly when they come from a Vishwamitra, from a Vasishtha, and from Śrī Rāma himself, are extraordinarily dense. Sometimes a single sentence, a single response can contain within it an entire darshana. Even a single word is so imbued with meaning that we could pass straight over it if we listen casually. And perhaps from here, you will begin to understand why I so often refer to the Ramayana as a Vedopabhrahmanam. The Ramayana does not announce its profundity to us. It rather reveals it slowly, sometimes through a conversation, sometimes through the conduct of a guru, and sometimes through the response of a shishya, and sometimes through something that Śrī Rāma says or does that appears remarkably simple until we stop and look again. Every spoken word from here on deserves our attention. The reasons why I call this a Vedopabhrahmanam will now begin to present themselves to us, but only if we are listening. Remember the question with which our entire journey began. In the very first Sarga of the Ramayana, Valmiki Maharshi approached Devarshi Narada and asked. He asked a question. He posed a pariprashna. And he said, Kaun vasmin sampratam loke gunavan, kasya viryavan, dharmagyascha krutagyascha, satyavakyo dhrudavrataha, charitrena chako yuktaha, sarvabhuteshu kohitaha, vidvankaha, kaha samarthascha, kaschaika priyadarshanaha, atmavan ko jitakrodho, dyutiman ko nasuyakaha, kasya vibhyasti devascha jata roshasya sanyuge. The question he asked was, who in this world today is truly endowed with noble qualities? Who possesses valor? That question has been waiting quietly behind everything we have witnessed thus far. 17 Sargas have passed, and now the answer is about to take human form. But as we come to know that answer, I also want us to notice the hands that helped sculpt the life before us. The Gurus. Because in one very deep sense, the Ramayana, this Vedopabhrahmanam, does not simply illuminate only Rama Vaibhavam. It illuminates also the Guru Vaibhavam. And so, with anticipation, with reverence, and with profound awe, I enter Sarga 18. Śrī Rāma is about to be born, and soon we shall meet Maharṣi Viśvāmitra. No, I stand corrected. Soon we shall meet Brahmarṣi Viśvāmitra. And Vālmīki Mahārshi narrates, Nivrutte kratau tasmin heyamedhe mahatmanaha pratigruhyamara bhagan pratijagmur yathagatam. Samapta diksha niyamaha patni gana samanvitaha pravivesha purim raja sabhrutya palavahanaha. Yatharham pujitastena ragyacha prithvishvaraha muditaha prayayurdeshan pranamya munipungavam. Shrimatam gacchatam tesham svagruhani puratataha balani ragyam shubhrani prahristani chakashire. Gateshu prithvisheshu Raja Daśaratha punaha pravivesha purim shriman puraskrutya dvijottaman. Shantaya prayayau sardham rushyashrungha supujitaha anugamyamano ragyacha sanuyatrena dhimata. Evam visrujyatam sarvan raja sampurna manasaha uvasa sukhitas tatra putrotpattim vichintayan. Tato yagya samaptetu ritunam shak samatyayahu tatascha dvadashe mase chaitre navamike tithau. Nakshatre dititaivatye svocha samstheshu panchasu gruheshu karkate lagne vakpata vinduna saha. Prodyamane jagannatham सर्वलोक नमस्कृतं कौसल्या जनयत् रामं दिव्यलक्षण संयुतं विष्णोरर्थं महाभागं पुत्रम् ऐक्ष्वाकुनन्दनं लोहिताक्षं महाबाहुं रक्तोष्ठं दुन्दुभिस्वनम् कौसल्या शुशुभे तेन पुत्रेणाम् अमिततेजसा यथा वरेण देवानाम् अदितिर्वज्रपाणिना भरतो नाम कैकेय्यां जज्ञे सत्यपराक्रमः साक्षात् विष्णोश्चतुर्भागः सर्वैः समुदितो गुणैः अथ लक्ष्मणशत्रुघ्नौ सुमित्रा जनयत्सुतौ वीरौ सर्वास्त्रकुशलौ विष्णोरर्थसमन्वितौ पुष्ये जातस्तु भरतो मीनलग्ने प्रसन्नधीः सर्पे जातौ तु सौमित्री कुलीरे अभ्युदिते रवौ राज्ञः पुत्रा महात्मानश्चत्वारो जज्ञिरे पृथक् गुणवन्तो अनुरूपाश्च रुच्या प्रोष्ठपदोपमाः जगुः कलं च गन्धर्वा ननृतुश्चाप्सरो गणाः देवदुन्दुभयो नेदुः पुष्पवृष्टिश्च कात्पतत् उत्सवश्च महानासीत् अयोध्यायां जनाकुलः रथ्याश्च जनसंवादा नटनर्तकसङ्कुलाः गायनैश्च विराविण्यो वादनैश्च तथा परैः विरेजुर्विपुलास्तत्र सर्वरत्नसमन्विताः प्रदेयांश्च ददौ राजा सूतमागतवन्दिनां ब्राह्मणेभ्यो ददौ वित्तं गोधनानि सहस्रशः अतिथ्यैकादशाहं तु नामकर्म तथा करोत् ज्येष्ठं रामं महात्मानं भरतं कैकेयीसुतं सौमित्रिं लक्ष्मणमिति शत्रुघ्नमपरं तथा वसिष्ठः परमप्रीतो नामानि कुरुते तदा ब्राह्मणान् भोजयामास पौरजानपदानपि अददत् ब्राह्मणानां च रत्नौघममलं बहु तेषां जन्मक्रियादीनि सर्वकर्माण्यकारयत् तेषां केतुरिव ज्येष्ठो रामो रतिकरः पितुः बभूव भूयो भूतानां स्वयं भूरिव सम्मतः सर्वे वेदविदः शूराः सर्वे लोकहिते रताः सर्वे ज्ञानोपसम्पन्नाः सर्वे समुदिता गुणैः तेषामपि महातेजा रामः सत्यपराक्रमः इष्टः सर्वस्य लोकस्य शशाङ्क इव निर्मलः गजस्कन्धे अश्वपृष्ठे च रथचर्यासु सम्मतः धनुर्वेदे च निरतः पितुः शुश्रूषणे रतः बाल्यात् प्रभृति सुस्निग्धो लक्ष्मणो लक्ष्मीवर्धनः रामस्य लोकरामस्य भ्रातुर्ज्येष्ठस्य नित्यशः सर्वप्रियकरस्तस्य रामस्यापि शरीरतः लक्ष्मणो लक्ष्मीसम्पन्नो बहिःप्राणः इवापरः न च तेन विना निद्रां लभते पुरुषोत्तमः मृष्टमन्नम् उपानीतम् अश्नाति नहितं विना यदा हि हयमारूढो मृगयां याति राघवः अथैनं पृष्ठतोऽभ्येति सदनहुः परिपालयन् भरतस्यापि शत्रुघ्नो लक्ष्मणावरजो हि सः प्राणैः प्रियतरो नित्यं तस्य चासीत् तथा प्रियः स चतुर्भिर्महाभागैः पुत्रैर्दशरथः प्रियैः बभूव परमप्रीतो देवैरिव पितामहः ये तदा ज्ञानसम्पन्नाः सर्वे समुदिता गुणैः ह्रीमन्तः कीर्तिमन्तश्च सर्वज्ञा दीर्घदर्शिनः तेषामेवं प्रभावाणां सर्वेषां दीप्ततेजसाम् पिता दशरथो हृष्टो ब्रह्मालोकाधिपो यथा ते चापि मनुजव्याघ्रा वैदिकाध्ययने रताः पितृशुश्रूषणरता धनुर्वेदे च निष्ठिताः अथ राजा दशरथस्तेषां दारक्रियां प्रति चिन्तयामास धर्मात्मा सोपाध्यायः स बान्धवः तस्य चिन्तयमानस्य मन्त्रिमध्ये महात्मनः Abhyagachan Mahateja Vishwamitro Mahamunihi Saragyo Darshanakanshi Dvaradhyakshanuvachaha Shighramakhyātamam praptam Kaushikam Gadinah sutam Tachutva vachanam tasya Rāgyo Viśvāmitra Sambhranta manasah sarve Tena vakyena choditaha Te gatva raja bhavanam Vishwamitram Rishim tada Praptama vedayamasur Nrupayekshvakave tada Tesham tad vachanam shrutva Sapurota samahitaha Pratyujjagama samhrushto Brahmanamiva vasavaha Sadrushtva jvalitam deeptya Tapasam samshita pratam Prahrishtavadano raja Tato arkyam upaharayat Saragya pratigruhyarthyam Shastra Dṛṣṭena karmana Kushalam cha vyayam chaiva Paryapruchchanaradipam Pure koshe janapade Bandhaveshu suhrutsu cha Kushalam kaushiko rāgyah Paryapruchchat sudharmikaha Apite sannataha sarve Samantaripivochitaha Daivam cha manusham chaiva Karmate sadhvunishtitam Vasishtham cha samagamya Kushalam munipungavaha Rushimscha tan yathanyayam Mahabhaga uvachaha Te sarve hrishta manasastasya Rāgyo niveshanam Vivishuhu pujitastena Nisheduscha yatharhataha Atahristamana raja Vishwamitram Mahamunim Uvacha paramodaro Hrishtastam apipujayan Yathamrutasya sampraptir Yatha varsham anudake Yatha sadrushadareshu Putra janma prajasya vai Pranashtasya yatha labho Yatha harsho mahodayaha Tathaivaagamanam manye Swagatam te mahamune Kamchate paramam kamam Karomi kimu harshitaha Patra bhutosi me brahman Tishtaya praptosi manada Aghyame safalam janma Jeevitam cha sujeevitam Yasmad viprendra madraksham Suprabhata nishamama Purvam Rajarṣi shabdena Tapasa dhyotita prabaha Brahmarṣitvam anupraptaha Pujyosi bahuda maya Tad adbhuta bhut vipra Pavitram paramam mama Shubhakshetre gataschaham Tava sandarshanat prabho Bruhiyat prarthitam tubhyam Karyamagamanam prati Ichhamya anugruhitoham Tvadartham parivruddhaye Karyasya vimarsham cha Gantumarhasi suvrata Karta chahameshena Daivatam hi bhavan mama Mama chayam anuprapto Mahan abhyudayo dvija Tava agamana jaha krutsno Dharmaschan uttamo dvija Iti hridaya sukham nishamya vakyam Shruti sukham atmavata vinita muktam Pratiguna yasha gunair vishishtaha Paramarishihi paramam jagama harsham And so, let us enter Sarga 18. The great yajna of Daśaratha had come to its conclusion. All the devatas received their ordained shares of the yajna and returned whence they came from. The kings who had assembled in Ayodhyā were honored according to their stature, and one by one they all too departed. Vishwamitra, accompanied by Shanta, took leave of Daśaratha. The great assembly dispersed. And Daśaratha remained in Ayodhyā, waiting for the one blessing for which all of this had begun. Putra-Kāmeṣṭi, the birth of his sons. 6 ritus passed, 12 months. And then the moment arrived. Valmiki Maharshi does not merely tell us that Śrī Rāma was born He records the extraordinary configuration of the heavens at the moment of his birth. It was Chaitra Masam, Shukla Paksham, Navamatithi. The nakshatra was Punarvasu, presided over by Aditi. The 5 grahas stood in exaltation, and Brihaspati, together with Chandra, occupied the Karkata. And then Valmiki says, Kausalya Janayat Rāmam Divya Lakṣmaṇa Samyutam. Kausalya gave birth to Rama, endowed with divine Lakṣanas, Lohitaksham, eyes tinged with red, Mahabāhu, mighty long arms, Raktostham, reddish lips, and a voice, Dundubhisvaram, deep and resonant like the sound of the Dundubhi. Kausalya shone with this sun of immeasurable tejas, as Aditi shines with Indra. Then through Kaikeyi was born Bharata, possessed of true valor and endowed with noble gunas. Valmiki tells us that Bharata was born under the Pushya nakshatra, with Surya in Meena. And Sumitra gave birth to 2 sons, Lakṣmaṇa and Śatrughna, both heroic and skilled in the use of astras. The twins were born under the Aślesha nakshatra, with Surya at the meridian in Karkata. And thus the 4 sons of Daśaratha had been born. And Ayodhyā erupted in celebration. The Gandharvas sang, the Apsaras danced, the celestial Dundubhis sounded, and flowers descended from the heavens. The streets of Ayodhyā overflowed with people. Actors, dancers, musicians, Vedic chanters, bards and singers filled the city. Daśaratha gave generously. Wealth was distributed, and thousands of cows were given away to Brahmanas. And after the prescribed period came the Namakarana. Under the guidance of Kulaguru Vasishtha Mahārshi, the 4 princes received the names by which the world would know them: Rama, Bharata, Lakṣmaṇa and Śatrughna. Vālmīki Mahārshi now carries us rapidly through the passing years. The prescribed samskaras were performed, the princes were all educated, and all 4 grew into extraordinary young men. All 4 of them became Vedavidaha, knowers of the Vedas. They were courageous, endowed with jnana, endowed with gunas. And Vālmīki Mahārshi gives us one more description that I do not want us to pass over. Sarva lokahite rataha, he said. All 4 of them were devoted to lokahita, the welfare of the people. That single expression tells us much about the dharmic conception of those who would one day wield power. Knowledge is necessary, strength is necessary, but both must finally turn towards lokahita. And amongst the 4, Vālmīki Mahārshi draws our attention particularly towards Śrī Rāma, beloved by all, pure like the moon in a clear sky, skilled in riding elephants, horses and chariots, accomplished in Dhanurveda, and devoted to the service of his father. And then Vālmīki Mahārshi reveals something beautiful about the brothers. From childhood, Lakṣmaṇa was inseparably attached to Rama. So profound was that bond that Valmiki uses an extraordinary expression. Bahiprana ivaparaha. Lakṣmaṇa was as though another prana of Rama existing outside his body. Bahiprana. Rama would not sleep comfortably without Lakṣmaṇa. He would not partake of food brought to him without Lakṣmaṇa besides him. And whenever Rama rode out to hunt, Lakṣmaṇa followed, bow in his hand, guarding his elder brother. And another bond had formed just as deeply. Śatrughna was extraordinarily dear to Bharata, and Bharata to Śatrughna. And thus, already, Valmiki places before us the two pairings that will accompany so much of what lies ahead: Rāma Lakṣmaṇa and Bharata Śatrughna. The years continued to pass. The princes grew in jnana, in guna, in fame, and in tejas. They remained devoted to Vedic study, to their parents, and to Dhanurveda. And Daśaratha looked upon the four sons for whom he had waited so long with immense joy. Eventually, his thoughts turned towards their marriages. Together with Vasishtha, Vamadeva, his relatives and counselors, Daśaratha began deliberating upon the marriages of his sons. And it is precisely at this moment that the man we encountered at the beginning of this Sarga arrives at the gates of Ayodhyā. Vālmiki Maharshi says, Abhyagachan Mahateja Vishwamitro Mahamunihi. Mahateja, Mahamuni, Vishwamitra. No further introduction is necessary. We now know who stands at the gates. Vishwamitra addresses the gatekeepers. Inform the king, he said, that Kaushika, the son of Gadhi, has arrived. The Dvarapalakas hurry immediately to Daśaratha. They do not proceed leisurely. Vālmiki Maharshi specifically tells us that they hurried and announced the arrival of the Maharshi, because even they knew that this was no ordinary rishi. Vishwamitra's khyati, his extraordinary renown, had spread far and wide. Even the Dvarapalakas of Ayodhyā understood the stature of the man who stood before them. Such were the times when reverence for the rishi was not confined to kings and the learned. It permeated the very fabric of the society. Daśaratha rises to receive him, and he does not go alone. Vasishtha Maharshi accompanies him. Now, there is an image worth holding for a moment. Vasishtha, Vishwamitra, and soon Rama. Daśaratha receives Vishwamitra according to Shastra, and Vishwamitra inquires after the king, his capital, his treasury, his kingdom, his relatives and friends, whether his vassals remain obedient, and whether his enemies have been subdued. And listen carefully to what Vishwamitra is really asking. These are not merely the courtesies of a guest. When a Brahmarṣi inquires of a Rajan whether his kingdom is secure, his people protected, and his responsibilities properly discharged, the question reaches deeper. He is saying, "O Rajan, are you fulfilling the Dharma entrusted to you? For the measure of a Rajan is not merely his own prosperity or happiness, but whether he is faithfully upholding the place assigned to him within the dharmic order. Vishwamitra then greets Vasishtha Maharishi and the other rishis present over there, and all of them enter Dasaratha's sabha. And now Dasaratha speaks. His joy at Vishwamitra's arrival is immense. Your arrival, he says, is like obtaining amrita, like rain upon a land without water, like the birth of a son to one who had none, like recovering a treasure thought forever lost. And then Dasaratha makes a promise. Tell me why you have come. Tell me what you desire. Whatever your purpose, I shall accomplish it. You need entertain no doubt. And then Dasaratha says something particularly significant. He said, once you were known as a Rajarṣi. Through tapasya, your prabha became radiant, and you attained Brahmarṣitvam. We already know something of the extraordinary journey contained within those few words. So Valmiki does not need to tell us that Vishwamitra is worthy of reverence. Dasaratha himself tells us, and he continues, tell me what has brought you here. Whatever your purpose, I shall fulfill it, for your arrival itself has blessed my home. There is something rather human in Dasaratha's words here. His reverence for Vishwamitra is unquestionable. And yet, listen to how the king speaks. Comparison follows comparison. Assurance follows assurance. Almost as though the sheer gravitas of the Brahmarṣi standing before him has unsettled the usual composure of the Rajan. There is admiration, there is reverence, but perhaps there is also a trace of apprehension. And remember, Vasishtha, his own Kulaguru, is sitting there. Dasaratha would have known well the extraordinary history between these two Maharishis, the epochal confrontation of an earlier age when Vishwamitra was still a Rajarshi and his immense Kshatriya Bala had stood against the Brahma Tejas of Vasishtha. Imagine then what this moment must have meant to Dasaratha. To behold those two towering figures now seated together in his own court. We should remember this moment because in the very next Sarga, when Vishwamitra finally reveals what he has come to ask, the contrast will become impossible to miss. Vishwamitra listens. And Valmiki Maharshi tells us that the great Brahmarṣi, hearing these words from Dasaratha, was filled with supreme joy. And there, Sarga 18 ends. Dasaratha has promised Vishwamitra, ask whatever you desire, I shall give. But Dasaratha does not yet know what the Brahmarṣi has come to ask for. The son for whom he had waited all those years. The son whose birth filled Ayodhyā with celebration. Śrī Rāma. But that awaits us in Sarga 19. Before we return to the conversation between Dasaratha and Vishwamitra, perhaps we should pause. because the Ramayana has just placed before us a personality of extraordinary magnitude, Vishwamitra Maharshi. And there is something about this Maharshi that we simply cannot pass over casually. For Vishwamitra is remembered by our tradition as the Dṛṣṭā, the seer of the Gayatri Mahāmantra. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere in the unfathomable antiquity of Treta Yugam, Vishwamitra first saw, first experienced that which humanity would preserve as the Gayatri Mahāmantra. And from that distant antiquity, we never stopped chanting it. Kingdoms arose, kingdoms disappeared, dynasties vanished, languages evolved, entire ways of life changed. A generation followed the generation, and yet the Gayatri Mahāmantra remained. Even today, in countless homes, as the first rays of Surya appear, these ancient sounds are heard once again. Perhaps learnt from a grandmother, perhaps from a father, perhaps received from a guru, and thus from one human being to another, from one generation to the next. Our Sanskriti carried these aksharas across an ocean of time. But that should provoke a question within us. Why? Why did generation after generation consider this mantra so precious that it had to be preserved? Why such meticulous concern for its ucharana, its laya, its dhvani, its very aksharas? A civilization does not expend such monumental effort preserving something for thousands of years, unless somewhere within it something priceless has been recognized, something worthy of being protected, something worthy of being transmitted, something that must not be lost. And therein lies a strange irony. For many of us that know the Gayatri mantra, we can chant it effortlessly. The words have lived upon our tongues since childhood. But do we truly understand what we are chanting? Perhaps we inherited the mantra, but have scarcely entered its depths. And therefore, the question becomes even more compelling. Why is this called the Mahāmantra? There are mantras for prosperity, mantras for health, for peace, for protection, for knowledge, for the innumerable aspirations of human life. So why this mantra? Why has Gayatri occupied such an extraordinary place within our Sanskriti? Is it merely a sacred vidhi to be recited or followed during a puja? A dharmic ritual at dawn, 24 aksharas to be remembered, chanted, and then forgotten as we proceed with the rest of our day? Or could there be dimensions concealed within these 24 aksharas that we have scarcely begun to understand? The tradition makes extraordinary claims about them, that these are not merely ordinary sounds. that the mantra works not merely through its meaning, but through shabda, through dhvani, through its laya, through repeated contemplation. That somehow the mantra can transform the very inner orientation of the human being. Now, there are two very easy ways to respond to claims such as these. One may simply bow one's head in Shraddha and accept them. Or the mind may immediately demand, where is the proof? But perhaps both these responses can become ways of avoiding the deeper inquiry. Because Shraddha need not forbid inquiry, and inquiry need not destroy Shraddha. Perhaps we could simply ask, what did Vishwamitra see? What is contained within this mantra that generations of our ancestors considered worthy of such extraordinary preservation? And what happens if instead of merely chanting the Gayatri, we actually listen to what it is asking? Let us do that precisely. Om Bhūt Bhuvasvaha Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. And now, notice something extraordinary. After thousands of years of preservation, after all that reverence, and after all those claims of profundity, what does this Mahāmantram actually ask for? Not wealth, not fame, not social position, not victory, not that our enemies disappear, not even that life's difficulties be removed. It asks for something that almost appears astonishingly simple. Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. May that divine radiance, Prachodayat, impel, inspire, direct our Dhi, our Buddhi. And perhaps right there, we begin to glimpse why this mantra reaches so deeply. Reflect upon our own prarthanas. What do we normally ask for? Give me prosperity. Give me success. Protect my children. Remove this obstacle. Give me that opportunity. Change this circumstance. Change that person. And sometimes, if we are particularly ambitious, perhaps even rearrange this unfathomable universe just a little to suit us. Our prarthanas so often reach outward. The problem is outside. The solution must therefore also come from outside. And somewhere Bhagavan must intervene and rearrange things for us. But how often do we fold our hands and say, O Bhagavan, illuminate my buddhi. Give me the viveka to recognize what is true, to distinguish dharma from adharma, to recognize what ought to be pursued and what ought to be abandoned, to know not merely what I can do, but what I should do. Perhaps we don't ask for buddhi because somewhere within ourselves we are already quite convinced that our buddhi is perfectly fine. It is everyone else who needs improvement. Our circumstances need improvement. Our fortune needs improvement. The world needs improvement. But me? Surely I already see correctly. And the Gayatri Mahāmantra challenges that assumption at its very root. Because a sharp buddhi is not necessarily an illuminated buddhi. One may possess extraordinary intelligence and use it to deceive, to manipulate, to dominate, to destroy. Intelligence alone does not guarantee dharma, and therefore Gayatri does not merely pray, "Make my buddhi sharper." Its prayer is far more profound. Illuminated. Give my buddhi the direction of light. Because once buddhi is rightly directed, something extraordinary follows. Our decisions change. When decisions change, karma changes. And when karma changes, the very direction of a life begins to change. Look at how often we approach life from the opposite end. We ask for the phalam, the fruit. Gayatri goes to the root. We ask for success. Gayatri Mahāmantra asks for the buddhi capable of navigating success. We ask for opportunity. Gayatri asks for the buddhi capable of recognizing opportunity. We ask for wealth. Gayatri asks for the buddhi capable of acquiring it rightly, using it rightly, and perhaps even knowing when enough is enough. We ask that the road ahead be cleared. Gayatri asks for something perhaps greater, the illumination by which we may see where to place the next step, even when the road is not clear. And suddenly, Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat does not appear to be such a small prayer anymore. Perhaps it contains almost every other prayer within it. Because if the instrument through which I perceive, I discern, I choose, and act is illuminated, then I'm no longer merely asking reality to rearrange itself around my desires. Something within me has changed. And perhaps this brings us to another extraordinary aspect of this mantra. If meaning alone were sufficient, why preserve the Sanskrit? Why preserve the precise aksharas? Why the concern with uchcharana? Why the laya? Why the dhvani? Why repeat the mantra at all? Translate its meaning, read it once, understand it, and we should be finished. But our tradition did not treat mantra merely as a sentence carrying information. Mantra is also shabda. The sound itself matters. The dhvani matters. The repetition matters. The contemplation matters. The same aksharas return again and again and again, until perhaps we cease merely speaking the mantra and begin allowing the mantra to work upon us. And this may be where we should become humble, because most of us, myself included, can chant a mantra mechanically. The lips know exactly what to do. The tongue remembers every syllable. Meanwhile, the mind has gone somewhere else entirely. The mantra continues, but we are no longer there. And perhaps that is one of the great tragedies of familiarity. that which is extraordinary can become ordinary simply because we encounter it every day. The Gayatri has survived for a millennia, but survival of the words does not necessarily mean survival of our wonder before them. And perhaps that is what Vishwamitra invites us to recover, not merely the mantra. We already possess the mantra. Our ancestors ensured that. But perhaps what we must recover is the inquiry, the astonishment, the willingness to enter those 24 aksharas and ask what generations before us found there, that they refused to allow them to disappear. And perhaps we will never completely know what Vishwamitra Maharshi experienced in that extraordinary moment of Dṛṣṭā. Perhaps those depths are not exhausted by translation, nor by commentary, nor even by intellectual understanding. They may have to be entered, experienced, realized. But even if we glimpse only one small dimension today, perhaps that is enough. Because now, when we hear Dhiyo yo na prachodayat, perhaps we hear something different. Not change the world for me, but illuminate that within me by which I meet the world. So, after all of this, perhaps we should ask the simplest question. What does the Gayatri Mahāmantra actually do? Perhaps its profundity lies precisely in its simplicity. Dhiyo yo na prachodayat, buddhi prachodanam. It seeks the illumination, the right direction of the buddhi. And when buddhi is illuminated, something begins to happen to the entire human instrument. What I think, what I speak, and what I do need no longer travel in three different directions: manas, vak, and karma, the thought, the word, and the action. They begin to align, trikarana shuddhi. And perhaps this is where the mystery of Vak itself begins to open. Because our tradition does not understand speech merely as the audible sound emerging from our lips. What finally emerges as spoken Vaikari has subtler depths behind it: Madhyama, Pashyanti, and ultimately Paravak. So the transformation sought by Gayatri is not merely, may I speak better words. It reaches deeper, illuminate the very buddhi from which intention, discernment, thought, word, and karma acquire their direction. Purify the source, and what flows from the source begins to change. And perhaps that is why this apparently simple prayer is so immense. It does not promise to place another power into you. It seeks to illuminate that which is already within you, so that your thought, your words, and your actions increasingly cease contradicting one another. And now, look again at the Maharshi standing before Daśaratha. Vishwamitra, the Dṛṣṭā associated with this Mahāmantra. A mantra preserved across the yugas, whose prayer reaches not first towards possession, but towards illumination. And this is the Maharshi who has now come asking for Śrī Rāma. Perhaps we should listen very carefully to every word he utters.